This episode is proudly supported by Anchor Food Professionals, makers of mainland cheese. Here's Andy Sy from the Notting Hill Hotel.
We've been using them for a few years now, using their tasty and mozzarella cheese. We go through about 135 kilos a week at the moment. So a huge number. So we use it for our garlic bread, our pizzas, our parmas, our bechamel, our cheese sauce for our croquettes and arancini, throughout our lasagnas, anywhere we can really. It's such a good product. You know, having the freshest chips to your freshest chicken to a freshly crumbed schnitzel and topping up with a really high quality cheese is amazing.
For more information, go to anchorfoodprofessionals.com.
It rewards so many parts of myself that that need filling. I don't feel like I now need to go and do this thing so that I, experience this. No, it's all quite encompassing, which can be the thing that's overwhelming for a lot of people coming into farming, but also is the beauty of it, that it becomes your life.
This is The Producers. I'm Dani Valent. Tess Sellar is the founder of Sellar Farmhouse Creamery on Dja Dja Wurrung country in central Victoria. She milks just 10 cows, then sells milk and yoghurt directly to consumers. Using an innovative We Come to You mobile milking shed and a community-supported agricultural model for sales, Tess is one young farmer making a go of dairy farming in a challenging and ever-changing market.
I'm Tess Sellar and I run Sellar Farmhouse Creamery up in Harcourt on Dja Dja Wurrung country. It's a micro dairy where we milk a small herd of 10 cows and process on farm in a little factory into milk and yoghurt. We're in a spectacular farm at the base of the Anganook, the mountain here. And I'm part of the Harcourt Farming Co-op, so it's a property that has been owned by Katie and Hugh Finlay and their Katie's family since the 70s, and it's an old orchard property. And about 10 to 8 years ago, as they wanted to step out from being the active farmers, they encouraged some of us younger farmers to come on and start our businesses. So over the time, we've had a market garden, we've got a bush foods plot, there's the still existing orchard and a nursery. And then I'm the livestock, running the cows in amongst it all.
Tess grew up in a rural area but didn't see her future on a farm. A bout of city living saw that start to change.
I grew up on a hobby farm in northeast Victoria, not dairy. We had most other things, but not dairy. And then I, as a teenager, like a lot of particularly girls in the country had no intention to stick around and fled to Melbourne, where I studied graphic art, so completely unrelated. But I quite quickly became involved in sort of food system stuff and food co-ops and food politics and food justice, and more realised I wanted to be on the producer end and also wanted to get out of the city. And then I got interested in dairy, partly for a love of dairy and partly I love working with animals. I'm better with animals than with humans. I saw a real challenge in the industry. I was hearing so many horror stories of just how hard it was. And I thought, let's take on that challenge. And so from there I got an internship at Holy Goat Dairy on the other side of the mountain to me. And that was my move to Central Victoria. And they were my greatest mentors for helping me design what I wanted to do. And then I spent 6 months on the road working on other dairies up and down the East Coast and was just exposed to this wealth of knowledge that is out there. And dairy farmers often struggled to get off farm, so it was a really good opportunity to throw myself in their world and learn from them. And people were just so generous with their knowledge. And then I had at that point made this connection with Katie and Hugh on the farm here. And so I came back and I got my first cow, Berta, and she was due to calve in May. And my partner, Ollie, was building all the infrastructure, and we naively thought that, oh yeah, a couple of months, we'll get it all up and running. And I spent 18 months making 20 litres of cheese at home every night before the factory was licensed. And so then once the factory, we had our first sale coincided with the first weekly market for the Castlemaine Farmers Market, and that was the start of December or end of November 2019. And then we had 2 months of just normal, and then everything went into, lockdowns and everything. We were incredibly lucky that the farmers market didn't skip a week for that whole time and became a real integral part of the food system of this area, because it was the only outlet for so many producers, and it was also, people felt more safe shopping there than other places. And yeah, it was, having that as a sales option was a huge boost to all of our businesses.
Finding land to buy or lease is a huge barrier for many aspiring farmers. Tess developed a model that works for her and also aligns with welfare goals for her milkers.
Yeah, so I'd been saving money for a long time and gaining experience, but I was at a point where I could either financially start my business or buy land, but I couldn't do both. And so through meeting Katie and Hugh and starting those conversations, it meant that I was able to kind of almost like a pop-up business that I could get started. And what goes with that is that all of my infrastructure is movable. So if a dream time comes when we can buy our own farm that we can live on and work on, then everything can go with me. We were inspired by some of the European models where, rather than the human-centric dairy where the cows come to us, we actually go to the cows in the paddock. So we have a mobile milking parlour, which is licensed with Dairy Food Safety Victoria. I believe it was the first. It's now not the first. There's some other ones popping up, which is great. And so as we graze the cows around the property, the milking parlour moves with them. And then we drive out every day on a little ute that's my partner converted to electric, and it has all the milking gear on it. And so we pull up in the paddock. I call the cows over. They come in, they get milked, and then they go back out to graze. And it means we have no build-up of effluent anywhere and we use very minimal water because there's no yards to wash out or anything like that. My system works very well because I only have such a small herd, but there are people running mobile milking systems with 500 cow herds, and they primarily do that so that they don't have to buy land, that they can rely on leased land but own the infrastructure themselves.
Tess's breed of cattle is chosen for its resilience and the fact that it's a dual-purpose cow used for both meat and milk.
I run mostly dairy shorthorn cows, which, while they used to 100 years ago be the most prominent dairy breed in Australia, are now listed as a heritage breed. So they're a dual-purpose animal. So my boys are worth as much for meat as beef animals, really. And the other big reason for having them is that Central Victoria pastures are not great. It's not what modern dairy would consider dairy country. And so the dairy shorthorn are just a much more resilient animal that does perform better on poorer quality pastures. And they're just a beautiful, resilient animal. Like they're good mums, and they calve easily, and they have good fertility. They wear a jersey. So I do have a few jerseys where they have this sort of yellow, creamy milk that's quite sweet. The dairy shorthorn is like a pure white colour, and it's a much more savoury flavour. It doesn't have that sweetness. And its fat to protein ratio is much closer together, which makes it a really good cheese-making milk, which I don't do, but I do sell to a couple of restaurants that do.
On most dairy farms, boy calves are a problem to be solved. Tess explains how she deals with cattle who are never going to produce milk.
Up until this point, because I've had a smaller herd, I've always been able to either harvest the boys for our own personal and family use, or some of my staff have taken one of the boys for their own use. But then I ended up with a lot of boys and no market to get rid of them. And we also have lost access to the Kyneton abattoir in the last 12 months. So that has ruled out me being able to process it myself. And then I also just don't have the capacity to also run a meat business alongside the dairy business. And so I then mentioned to Will from Pig and Earth at the farmers market, who's next to me, that I was in this dilemma and I'd love to find someone to grow out the boys. And he said, oh, I might be interested in that. So we now have a deal where when I wean the boys, they go straight to Will and he grows them out for what was already his business of running beef. And it means that he doesn't have to breed, which is pretty awesome.
With a herd of just 10, every litre counts. Tess explains her business model.
So I run my sales as a CSA, which is community supported agriculture, mostly. And that means that people pay for 3 months up front for a standing order that they pick up every week. And they commit to me that they'll pick it up rain, hail or shine. And I commit to them that I'll provide it rain, hail or shine. And then I have a buffer, which is sort of the extra bit of milk that I sell at the farmers market every week. And that means that if for some reason my planning didn't work out and I don't have as much milk as I had hoped, that I can drop that buffer, or if I've got excess like I do at the moment, I can increase that buffer, but I can always meet those CSA subscriptions. So there's the CSA customers, and then there's just the market customers, and all of those they're buying the milk or the yogurt, and it's in returnable glass, so they return that every week and it goes back in the cycle. And then I have 3 amazing restaurants that I work with in Central Vic who all practice what they preach. When they talk about actually supporting farmers and buying locally, they really mean it. And what that looks like is that when I have excess milk, like at the moment, I can text them on a Monday and say, do you want a bucket this week? And they will say yes or no, and it's usually yes. And then when the season change catches up with me and I'm not prepared and all of a sudden I have a huge dip in milk, I can text them on the Monday morning and say, I'm sorry, I don't have it this week. And they'll say, that's fine. It was good while it lasted. And so that is just, it's so amazing for me to be able to quickly move that quantity of milk, because it would be much harder to just pick up that many individual customers and then drop them and expect them to keep coming back. So that's been a huge boom. And it's really fascinating working with those chefs and hearing what they make with it, because cheese making brings out a whole different side to milk than milk and yogurt does. And so they might, pick up on change of season in ways, or that just the fat to protein ratio is much more significant to them than it is to me.
Questions of value are often tricky for boutique producers. Tess talks us through the numbers.
I think it's one of the things that a lot of small producers really struggle with, is that we don't want to produce a luxury product. We do want to produce something that the average person can eat, and we're often really concerned about, nutritious food being accessible to people. But at the end of the day, if we don't set it at a price that covers our costs, we won't be here doing it next year. So that's always a really tricky balance. And I'm sure a lot of people would say that my product is priced out of the average person's range. But it also, I try and do it just as cheaply as I can to cover so that I can keep going. And things like the subscription help that. The subscription is a cheaper way because it's a commitment than buying at the market. And yeah, I had my first price rise in 6 years recently, because I was like, I'm now well behind the cost of inflation. I need to. And my customers were all really, really supportive of that. So that was really great. And I think that's the thing. So for subscriptions, it's $5 a litre or $10 for yogurt, and at market it's $5.50 a litre or $11 for yogurt. I also I have a monthly newsletter that my CSA subscribers get that just talks about the farm, and we've had open days and things like that, and school groups often come and do milkings with me. So I think I think a lot of my CSA customers do feel like they get more than just the milk as well. It's kind of that they're their herd as well. They get to be part of it and know that connection.
Broader farming dynamics have affected dairy farming, perhaps more than any other agricultural sector. In amongst the complexity and change, there is one constant. Dairy cows need milking every single day.
I guess one of the things is that dairy is only ever as profitable as how cheaply you can produce feed. And so that has all changed so much over the last 100 years due to things like irrigation and who owns water rights and how expensive land is and how expensive good land is, and then access to markets. And more that the price that farmers get is set separately to that by other people that have very different interests. And so we've seen a lot of the kind of medium-scale family farms have just dropped out of the industry. Someone that I was working with in the industry told me that I think it was 300 dairy farmers have already left this year because it's just been such a rough year with floods and droughts and feed costs and everything. And I think dairy in particular can be such a hard one because at the end of the day, on top of all of that, you have to get up and milk cows every day. You can't take a week to regather and think about that. There's just so much that's a daily must do that it can be really hard to kind of get perspective and make a long-term plan without drying off your herd. So yeah, I think it's a really complicated one. I'm sure lots of people would have other thoughts around it, but that's what it has seemed to me. And when the 6 months before I started milking here, my two closest dairy farmers, who were also good mentors of mine, stopped milking because they just you can't produce feed in Central Victoria of a high enough quality to compete with people that are milking off Murray irrigation or other areas. And I think there's maybe two other cow dairies left in Central Vic now. So it's really where we went from that every area produced its own milk off small herds, we've now gone to that there are these dairy areas that produce most of the milk.
Tess Sellar was under no illusions that farming was going to be easy. What are her challenges and how does she meet them?
I find the relentlessness of it hard. Like you've just got to get back up and keep going, which is what all farming is. But because I'm at a small enough scale, I didn't have to take on any debt, which was a huge thing. And that gives me flexibility a little bit of how fast I grow my herd and how much I produce. And I live very cheaply, so that a lot of my costs that other people might have don't exist. But for me, I just love it so much. And that's because of working with my animals, and doing the mobile system and a small system. I get to spend all that time with my animals. My mornings, while maybe some might consider them inefficient, my milkings, it's my time of the day where I am out in nature and I'm watching the world wake up, and I'm observing my animals and predicting what might or might not happen. And I'm looking at my pastures and deciding where to go next and what might need changing. Or it's a huge information gathering time for me.
Despite the complexities and challenges, Tess Sellar is sure she's doing what she's meant to be. What does she love about what she does?
Working with the cows and being out in nature. It's so awesome to be forced to be out in the elements sometimes. And with the mobile milking parlour outside, lots of people sort of question about, what's it like on muddy, rainy days? But they're actually so few. There's so few days in the year, and it has a roof, so I'm undercover. There's something so magical about building trust and this strong relationship and bond with another species that is enormous and could really hurt you, but to just like reach that point where you can call their name and they come over and they trust you with their calves, and they, you know, it's a magical thing. It's really beautiful. And sadly, quite often the ones you build the strongest relationships with are the ones that have gone through hardship because you've spent that time with them. Often the ones who don't need any help are the ones that are like, nah, I'll take or leave you. I find it such an incredible privilege, an awesome experience to do something that kind of ticks all of my boxes for what I believe in the world. Like I mostly just don't feel compromised in how I get up and spend my days. And I feel really, it rewards so many parts of myself that that need filling. I don't feel like I now need to go and do this thing so that I, you know, experience this. No, it's all quite encompassing, which can be the thing that's overwhelming for a lot of people coming into farming, but also is the beauty of it, that it, you know, becomes your life.
Sellar Farmhouse Creamery is a very special dairy, producing milk from a herd of 10 cows on Dja Dja Wurrung country in central Victoria. Tess Sellar reckons she's better with animals than people, but by building such strong bonds with her cattle, she's nourishing people in her community and providing local restaurants with the raw material to make wonderful cheeses. This is The Producers, a Deep in the Weeds production. I'm Dani Valent. Stay tuned as we talk to some of Australia's best farmers, makers and growers. Follow us on Instagram at Producers Podcast or contact us via deepintheweeds.com.au.